The last thing I was really going to talk about was player tracking. So we do two types of player tracking. We currently do GPS for practice and RF tags for games. We're looking at possibly switching that up, which I'll talk about. But GPS-based is a system called Catapult is what we use. And this is what that little receiver looks like. It sits in a harness on, they either have kind of a half shirt that it will sit on, or our practice jerseys actually have a pocket that it fits in. And what this is a GPS receiver with an accelerometer in it as well. And it actually will broadcast the data. So actually one of our assistant strength coaches is literally sitting with a laptop on the practice field looking at the real-time data from everyone's Catapult unit. Especially during training camp, the last drill of the day will be based on how hard they worked through the practice because we don't want them to exceed a certain limit. So it is that fine-tuned in terms of looking at the data during practice and adjusting on the fly. Used by a third of the NFL and about 20 plus colleges, this Catapult system. And purpose is to reduce injuries and have the players in top physical condition. So we tailor our practices in order to, our hardest day of the week is Wednesday. And then it kind of gets easier and easier as the practices move along. So, but our strength staff does a fabulous job with this, actually tracks not only distance, but how many times did they reach full sprint. And they only want them to reach a full sprint, and I'm not going to say a number because I'll probably get that number wrong, but a certain time during the week because they feel like if a player does that sprinting from accelerating too much during the week, they have more chance of a soft tissue injury, hamstring, etc. So, I mean, it is that tuned for players' health is what we're looking at data-wise. Okay, so this is the screen from the Thundercloud app and what it looks like. So why it's out of order, I don't know. But you can see the thumbprints of where you can hit to hit play and rewind. So I told you it was on there someplace. So we can actually match up the GPS data and actually see past the players, compare it to the video. Down here is actually acceleration rates. So we can actually compare players across and see how fast they're accelerating or not. And compare speeds among players. So RF chip-based. So last year, the NFL office itself hired a company called Zebra Technologies. And they are using RF tags for players during the games. Unfortunately, I have yet to get my hands on this data because the real reason they did it for was media, and now all the teams are asking for it. So I believe we ultimately might get some, but have not gotten it yet. So really, it was the NFL broadcasting group. So if you ever hear the TV announcers talking about next-gen stats, this is what they're basing it on, is the RF tags and players. So they can start talking about player speeds. The different routes they run is all determined by the computer based on the RF tags, et cetera. We actually look to getting this, if the NFL will release game data, we've talked about going to practice data just so we have apples and apples comparison rather than two different systems. So our quote is that it would take 33 RF receivers to circumvent our field to be able to capture all the players that are on our 3 practice fields. So whether that happens or not, still depending on the league trying to make decisions if we get that. The RF tag is literally about a nickel size. It goes usually on the shoulder pads, but you can wear it on practice jerseys as well, but one on each shoulder. The chip itself is good for the entire season. And they turn it on and off with this unit right outside the locker room. So as they walk through, they're able to turn the RF unit on and off to make it last for the entire season. Footballs are designed to have an RF tag put in it. It was for the Pro Bowl. We're going to use it for preseason games, but it's not been approved for regular season games yet. So from what I understand, you can't tell the difference. The way I throw a football, you probably couldn't tell the difference anyway, so it would not matter. But real professionals have thrown the ball and have not been able to determine if there is a chip in there or not. So software, kind of either player tracking, but this is more on the RF side. It's kind of breaking down, we kind of look at data in 3 different areas, and I'll show some quick screenshots of some things. One is schematics, which is the actual location of the players, the all 22, and pass run. And this kind of goes more into our game analysis where we talked about what routes did they run, how did the defense align, et cetera. That's what the schematics part of the RF chip. And this is, the screenshots are probably why the NFL committee has not approved it for the NFL teams yet, because they're afraid certain teams are going to get so much of advantage if they just release if they release data to the teams, that there's going to be kind of that data war. The teams that are good at doing data, which I would like to say we are, but would have a more competitive advantage than teams that aren't willing to put in the resources to it. And everything they do at the NFL level, they tried to be, like I said in the very first slide, balanced, and they figured this might create too much of a competitive advantage for certain teams. So, but this is one area. Tactics in terms of just who's on the field. So this was our game, I think, versus Indianapolis. We were what we call 12 personnel, which means 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, and a running back on the field at the time. 27 times. See, Allen Robinson was on for all 27, Alan Hearns for 22, Marquise Lee was for 5 plays. What was interesting, when Marquise was on the field, it was 4 passes. So it was 80% pass with the 5 plays. He was on the field. The other 2 were balanced. So this is kind of looking, based on who's on the field, can we determine any run-pass tendencies? Again, it goes all back to that whole 15 seconds. If you can give a coach a 10% more chance they're going to run or pass, that means we have an advantage to be able to call our offensive or defensive play accordingly by just knowing that kind of knowledge. So this is where you kind of try to dig in and find out as much as you can ahead of time. The last area is performance. So here was Robinson. I think this was the Houston game. The red line was the last Houston game. The blue line was the first Houston game in terms of the number of the distance he ran at certain speeds. And we're just comparing to see, and then underneath distance, accelerations, et cetera. So just that you're able to fine tune down to the individual player, their speed, what they're doing during the play, and to be able, from a player's safety and health and performance aspect, be able to look at that data.